Well, Chris, I thought this was a hell of an episode of Dynamite. I felt there was a sort of a party atmosphere amongst AEW, Tony Khan off camera, the announcers on camera for this spring breakthrough episode because, as they mentioned numerous times, including at the end, this was a historic episode, beating the number of episodes, surpassing the number of episodes of WCW Nitro. They didn't say that. They didn't say that explicitly, but Tony Schiavone said it's the longest running episodic pro wrestling series on TBS. I don't think he included TNT in that, or on TBS or TNT, because obviously Nitro's on TNT, but whatever, on former Turner channels. And I think they stopped short of gloating. It more was just prideful celebration, and it is an accomplishment. And, we can, Eric Bischoff and, whoever can push back on the viewership numbers and all that. It's a different era, but it is a significant marker in the history of Dynamite. And honestly, I thought this was a really good episode for that marker. This was, and Tony Schiavone kind of seemed to get it, although he thought the show was ending before the main event, as Excalibur had to stop him. We're not signing off yet. We got another match, Tony. But I thought that this was as on brand for what AEW fans take pride in, AEW being as a counter to WWE, of a show, of an episode of Dynamite I've seen in a while. I thought this was a kind of a mini pay-per-view, and it was meant to be on paper, but they weaved in some storylines too. So I thought they struck a good balance. And one thing that also hit me is, and this is something I've been talking about for 6 months, longer, maybe a year, AEW needs to decide who they're in the business of and get in that business. Are you in the Moxie business? Are you in the Omega business? Are you in the Swerve business? They're not, like, this didn't have filler. Like, those annoying mid-carders, the lower, I shouldn't say, not all the mid-carders are annoying, but there's some that were kind of not cool. And AEW did go through a spell of a lot of, it just felt uncool. I also thought this show felt cool. So to me, this is a building block is maybe the wrong term, but a show to kind of put a pin in and go, if we ever get off track, let's look back at this when we had a intimate atmosphere, 3,000 people plus packed into an older industrial intimate setting, and they were into everything. And it was high energy, start to finish. Chris, I sensed from our very brief conversation before, and you aren't necessarily as high on the show as I am, but go ahead and comment.
There was a lot to love in this show, and I think you nailed it when you said that the show did a lot to show why AEW is different and why it's an alternative. There's some stuff in here I absolutely detested, and which we'll get to, I'm sure, and some stuff that was a minor irritant. I'm also not sure. Do we know what number episode this was? I don't know if they mentioned that at all through the night. I was a little confused.
I just know, like, next week and the week after and the week after that, there's no stopping us. 291, 292, 293.
Well, every week they're setting a new record, so they should acknowledge it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
No, I thought that there was some standout matches, of course. There was some good storyline development. The locker room uniting at the end to actually celebrate the Death Riders losing a title kind of felt significant, but also late, if you know. So, yeah, a lot to like, a lot to build on. There will be stuff that I didn't like, but overall, one of the better shows in a very long time.
Yeah. By the way, I hadn't looked at the chat until you were talking, and I'm glancing at this, and I'm like, oh, let's see what people are saying about this show. And I'm just looking over these comments, and one after another complimenting the show. I'll read some of these right now. SF Niners fan 23 said, pretty good show. Every segment had a purpose and story advancement. That's the least complimentary comment here amongst the people in the chat. Azan White said, this show felt special. Brian Bayless says, I thought this was one of the more enjoyable episodes of Dynamite in months. Sadler version 3. I actually really liked this episode. It felt like a way to get some attention on themselves during WrestleMania week. I don't know if it'll work, but I like the effort. Adam Kidd, great episode, minus the women as currency. Yep. I thought it was Vince booking for a minute. Yep, definitely. We'll get to that. Dougie Doug says, fun show. AEW did a good job not just phoning it in WrestleMania week and have done a good job being in the discussion all week. Another comment, Zachman86 said, outside of the stupid MJF Hurt Syndicate women thing, that was an incredible show. And then as far as the building goes, compliments. Bobby F. said the crowd and the building setup were great. Adam Kidd said the arena looked great. Brian Bayless says, yeah, the challenger brand identity tonight was what they need to showcase more of going forward.
But according to Nick Khan, WWE is the underdog, right? We know this. They're always the underdog. So clearly AEW can't be the challenger brand.
Yes. I can't even. Derek Mitchell says, I think it was a good show, but one AEW issue is maintaining momentum from week to week. So I think that's a good comment to end on. We'll talk about the specifics of what we liked and some other things that are worth criticizing, such as the women as currency, which is a good way to put it. I'm not going to defend it, but I will say it was an MJF idea, and it's on brand for him, thinking of women as currency. That said, we'll table that and cover it more in depth. You can't get away with that. It's not a get out of jail free card just because MJF did it. But I think that was their thinking. So let's extrapolate for a couple minutes here, Chris, what challenger brand means, what finding their identity means, what I kind of explained that they need to decide who they're in the business of and make it a show about them. And they're back. They're clearly watching the show. It's Mercedes Moné, it's Athena, it's Will Ospreay. In the end, the Young Bucks were Strickland. You got Moxley and his crew. It's like you can watch the show. Hangman Page, you got to mention, MJF and the Hurt Business. This was a show that featured Don Callis even. Like I said, get in the Don Callis business. Get him on TV. Make sure he's got this intriguing thing going on with Josh Alexander. Maybe good, maybe bad, depending on where you want to see Alexander slotted. But this was a show that start to finish showcased who they're in the business of right now. And if they want to sell tickets to Dynamite, you want people sitting at home to go, I wish I was in the building for that experience. And this was not a cavernous building that was darkened everywhere. And there's something to be said for the ribbon and the modern arenas and the big stage. If you have 4,000 plus, maybe 5, you can make it look really good. I don't think at 3,000 you can. This felt like it was a ticket where they turned people away at the door. The ticket was so hot. So to me, we can talk about Challenger brand and what their identity, but this is a show that I think helps sell tickets to future Dynamites and Collisions. And that's another feeling I came away with here. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that everybody on this show was over in one way or another. Everybody got a reaction. And Christian Cage got a pop, for crying out loud, and he hasn't really been doing much of anything. Athena and Mercedes both got a massive cheers when they came out. The biggest cheer, I don't know if we have an on-site person, but Swerve Strickland.
We have someone scheduled who was in the building. So
Swerve Strickland seemed ridiculously over. It could have been because of the moment, but the reaction when they realized it was him in the crowd, conveniently, was stars above everybody else. And I think that's what AEW really did well tonight, is they put on the people that they want you to focus on. We even got some Tony Storm showing up, who they should be in the business of as well. They need to keep this momentum up, as Derek Mitchell mentioned earlier. They need to make sure they come back to this and that they keep showing us these people. You can't do all the important people all the time every week. Every now and then you're going to need to throw something on there as a comic relief, something a little silly, and that's fine. Yeah. But I think if you really wanted to show tonight, at a time when we're 2 days away from an 18-hour smorgasbord of professional wrestling all weekend, you needed to do something that reminded people that you exist. Mm-hmm. And like they showed what makes AEW stand out above WWE. Not that they've had a problem with match quality and putting on great matches on TV. That's never been an issue. But they managed to do it tonight while threading a story through it all, which has been my biggest complaint and yours as well.
Yeah.
Those two don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can do both. And there's a lot of room for AEW to pull back on the quality of their matches, especially on free TV, to make you want to order the pay-per-views more, to see the better matches, but also to spend some of that capital, some of that time on giving you a reason to care about the people who are putting on these amazing matches.
Well, this is a show where if you had never watched AEW before, you would understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Like it's out there. There's a tournament. There's brackets. Even they caught people up on Athena. They talked about how long she's held the title. They didn't explain what ROH is and why it exists and why can't I find it anywhere to watch. I mean, there's this whole mystery vortex that ROH exists in. But they talked about the comparative records of Mercedes and Athena and their background. They shared a locker room, but never a ring one-on-one. they said the same thing with Josh Alexander and Hangman Page. And by the way, now I'm going to get off track slightly, but the structure of the first two matches were like almost identical.
Yes, I pointed that out.
Yeah, like we're gonna go back and forth in the ring, some mat wrestling, and then we're gonna brawl outside. Then and all the way to the finish with like I'm gonna counter or avoid a finisher and then do a roll up finish, and then the more established AEW wrestler won. And that got me thinking: am I just noticing something about every match in pro wrestling these days? Like, and it's just because they're back to back? No, not all matches are. So I don't know if they had the same agent or what, but it was sort of like one was about 6 minutes longer than the other, so you can't watch them side by side. But if you kind of crunched Athena, Mercedes, or actually sped it up to 1.5 speed, and you watched them side by side, they'd almost like just parallel each other. Yeah. Ringside action all the way through the type of finish. I don't even know what to make of it, but it struck me.
We've talked about that before, though, how a lot of the matches in AEW in the same show use the same spots and they don't seem to be talking to each other. Mm-hmm. This one was glaring because they were one right after the other. Two matches with battles back and forth on the apron, 2 matches with a roll-up finish, like you mentioned. The Josh Alexander thing, just one thing that really stood out to me, not only did they mention his history with Don Callis, they mentioned his history with being in Ring of Honor with Hangman. They even told us why he wears protective headgear. And they gave us some background on who he is as a person and the surgeries he's had to go through, which is something we've been screaming for when you bring in these people who have a history outside of North American national TV promotions. Nobody really knows who Josh Alexander is outside of hardcore wrestling fans. So we know something about him now. And there was a time when they would have just said, oh, this guy's great, Google him.
Yep. I totally agree. I mean, start to finish, this was a show that if you were introducing someone to AEW, this would be where you'd want it. And I don't think they'd be like, why is everyone standing around and talking? Or why is there this contrived skit? Like it's a small thing, but because it bothers me so much when they do it wrong, for lack of a better term, the way that Christian Cage was in the background and it was Kip Sabian who drew attention to Nick, and Nick's like, what? And then he looked over and then he came in. There was like, I could believe that there's this interview being set up with Nick Wayne, Mother Wayne, and Kip, and then Christian kind of in a stealth way just shows up and just stands there, and he knows he'll catch the peripheral vision of Kip and interrupt the interview. That makes a lot more sense than when someone walks into the screen into camera view, but they're in a big room and everyone acts surprised that they didn't know they were there. Or whatever. There's just contrivances and sloppiness. There was a little attention to detail. I hope that's part of a pattern of more attention to detail, because I wasn't sitting there thinking, why didn't they notice him earlier? Boy, that was a contrivance. I just appreciated the segment, and then afterwards I was like, oh, that was smartly done.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's pause and introduce ourselves. A lot more to get into in the show. Get into more specifics about the matches that we're heralding at this point, and all that. Specifically speaking, we'll also jump right to our on-site correspondent to find out what it was like in that venue tonight, that high-energy venue. Taylor will be joining us in just a minute. This is a Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post show for Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller. I'm the host of the show. I'm also the editor, publisher, and founder of the decades-long running Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletter. We started before Nitro started its streak that Dynamite broke this week by a good number of years. And you can dive into the back issues of our library of Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletters covering wrestling on a weekly basis since the late 1980s. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. For details, you can also jump into our WrestleMania special section with roundtable reviews dating back to 2004, a roundtable podcast reviewing the shows, maybe 2003 or 2004. So 20 some years of them, along with retro roundtables looking at marching through earlier WrestleManias, starting with one. We also have all my reports with star ratings and roundtable reviews from the Torch staff. Really in-depth coverage since the late 1980s of WrestleMania. If you like the way we approach our analysis on these post shows and our podcasts, I think you'll appreciate looking at what we thought of WrestleMania 8 and WrestleMania 11 and WrestleMania 18 and WrestleMania 24 and all of them in between and since then. So it's one reason to go VIP. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. A full VIP membership paid with credit card, debit card, or PayPal gets you into the library. I could go on for 20 minutes, and sometimes I have, if I don't catch myself, and tell you about everything waiting for you there. It's an ad-free experience, both on the podcast side and website side, mobile and desktop, and it includes exclusive columns and features every day. And we also have on our podcast feed, if you're interested in wrestling history, our 18 years ago feed. I think today we put up a Bruce Mitchell audio show from 18 years ago, diving into the news of the week at that point, which included analysis of TNA. And I wrote an editorial in that week's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter discussing the format for TNA and what I think they should aim for. And it was interesting. I was reading back on it. I'm like, I barely remember writing this 18 years ago, but it was a topic that Bruce and I covered in depth. Also, and this fascinated me, we're talking about big moments in AEW history. The initial pre-AEW All In was this attempt to draw 10,000 fans without a WWE logo above you in the United States. Do you remember, Chris, the Hulk Hogan Big Show match in Memphis? That was their attempt to draw 10,000 fans at the Mid-South Coliseum. Hogan was kind of, as Bruce Mitchell put it, Hogan was feeling neglected. WWE didn't want him anymore. And he and Big Show went and, ran that building, and they drew, between 2,000 and 4,000 people. It wasn't nearly as successful as Cody and company were in the Bucks and everything with their show. So Bruce and I talked about that. And so there's a lot of wrestling history that you'll learn about and can impress your friends with, and understand that wrestling history as a way of repeating itself, but also understand the differences. So there's my VIP plug. I'll shut up and move on to other things. We are here to talk Dynamite, and you can participate. One way is by email, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Another is in the chat room. Just jump on in to the chat if you're watching us live on the PWTorch YouTube channel. Type your questions in or just comments. We'll highlight them on the screen and read them to our audio-only podcast audience. Speaking of which, if you're discovering us on YouTube and you want the podcast version, some of them are podcast only. We put out a lot more content for free on our podcast channels than we do on YouTube. Search Wade Keller, subscribe to the red and blue logo, and then search PWTorch and subscribe to the colorful Dailycast logo and also the charcoal colored PWTorch VIP logo. Those 4 feeds will get you everything that we offer for free. And then you can always upgrade to VIP from there and get even more content and ad-free versions of our free shows. Another way to participate is as a video caller or audio-only caller. The link to that is a VIP on my VIP exclusive report on Dynamite and on our Patreon page. We reserve that for our members, but you can find that link and join us if you want to be part of the discussion tonight. Joining me today is Chris Lansdell. He is a PWTorch contributor. His beat is primarily New Japan, and it is a big New Japan week. I'm very proud of our coverage of the changes in New Japan. Some announcements there. Greg Parks had his column up on that. Sean Radican wrote the news story, and Alan Cunahan, who is a foremost expert in Japanese wrestling, wrote a column, a long-form column, talking about what New Japan needs to do to react to this loss of talent and analyzing the situation. PWTorch.com is the place to go for that, or PWTorchVIP.com if you're a VIP member for an ad-free version with additional bonus content. Chris, we won't get too into that today because there's so much going on Dynamite tonight, but I'm sure you've got thoughts on that, and maybe there'll be a 7-star, 8-star podcast about it.
There's a 7-star hopefully coming up, and I'm also working on a series of So You Want to Get Into New Japan articles that I'm going to be sending you fairly soon. Great. With just some breakdowns and some basics. And I think there was some mention of it tonight as well, with Nick Wayne going over to Japan for the Best of the Super Juniors, which is basically a cruiserweight tournament. If you like high-flying wrestling, it's a really good time to start watching some New Japan when that tournament starts. If you can't stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to start watching it, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to catch some random dude doing some coverage on that.
Excellent. Very good. If you're interested in contributing to PWTorch, if you have an area of particular interest, or you just want to be part of the team, we've got a great team of volunteers who round out our coverage and provide a lot of different perspectives and different ages, different backgrounds as fans, different passions. Drop me a line, kellerwade@gmail.com. If you're interested, you can go to the staff page and at the staff and contact email page. The link is on our website to see the list of contributors, current contributors, but also the open spots that we have for other columns that either are vacated or new ideas we have. So if you're interested in being part of the team, which can lead to co-host positions, which is how most people become co-host, email me and let me know what you're interested in. All right, so let's shift to our on-site correspondent, Taylor, if Taylor is ready for us. Taylor attended in Boston tonight. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Wade? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can. You standing outside the venue?
I just left the venue and I just pulled over on the side of the road. So
good. Great idea.
Yeah,
great idea.
I'm good. I'm in a safe spot. No worries.
Cool. So I don't know if you heard anything what we said, but I thought this was a statement show for AEW, on brand. It established to me what they want to do to differentiate themselves from WWE. For better or for worse, I think mostly for the better tonight. And I also thought this was a type of show, and this is what I want to get your insight on, that if you watched it on TV, you would go, I wish I was there, and I want to go next time Dynamite's in my town to be part of that. Tell me what it was like in that building, because they had about a little over 3,000 people, intimate, kind of this old industrial-looking setup in there, and it was intimate and high energy start to finish. So tell me what it was like for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was from the second, Justin Roberts came out and said, "Hey, we're starting in 30 seconds." The place was like ready to go. It was awesome. I've been to Dynamite. I've been to Dynamite pretty much every time since they've come. They've played the Agganis Arena, which is Boston University. They played the Garden. This was easily the best live experience I've had. AEW. This is also the first time I've been to the MGM Music Hall, which is it's literally right behind Fenway Park. It's like attached to Fenway. They need to keep going there as many times as they can. It was it was a great night. The crowd was awesome. Everyone was having a good time. It reminded me of like early days going to Dynamite. So yeah, it was awesome.
Chris, ask Taylor a question about his experience tonight.
Yeah, I want to start with the opening match, and it really seemed like you guys were really into both Athena and Mercedes. I won't make too much fun of the complete lack of rhythm on the CEO chants. But was that match as hot in the building as it seemed? Like, how did it feel to you being in there?
Yeah, I mean, they picked a great match. I figured they were going to kick it off with either that or Ospreay. Mercedes is from Boston, so she always gets, a good crowd here, even back to her, WWE days. But I just think everyone was so ready to see that match. And then it kind of happened so quickly. Everybody waited for it. And then it was like, you kind of saw the bracket for the Owen, and you were like, oh, well, they're going to go second round. So that's, hopefully that lines up with Boston. But yeah, everyone was hot, was ready to go. I don't know if you heard about 10 minutes into the match, they started a Celtics chant. That was because Kristaps Porzingis from the Celtics walked into the building. So
they showed him on camera a little bit later, but yeah, he didn't get booed like that poor Boston Bruin next to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, well, Tuukka Rask has kind of a love-hate in Boston. So that was kind of if they had brought Tim Thomas out, I think it would have been a better reception. But yeah, no, that match was great. Yeah, I mean, I thought that match was great. I thought they did a great job.
Did anything not work with this crowd or for you?
I would say the only thing that kind of got like a iffy, like, ooh, was when MJF brought out the girls. That was one of the few times I think the crowd was like, how do we react to this? Which was, I don't know. I mean, his character is that he's a scumbag, so he's gonna do scumbag things, I guess. So yeah,
you're hitting the rhythm and the beats of our analysis of that. It was like, yeah, that felt a little dated. It's like if you watch old Deal or No Deals with Howie Mandel, he's like, hey, bring out the girls, and it's like, it's just it feels dated. But then I countered, well, MJF is a scumbag, and it's sort of on brand for him. And then you go, but are people going to think about it's a scumbag MJF doing it, or AEW is a brand living in the past? So yeah, I mean, you're bringing up some things that we'll probably delve into later on too, in a little more detail. I don't want to fail to ask this: did Tony Khan come out and address the crowd?
Yeah. So I don't know how much they showed after AEW went off the air, but after
by definition, nothing.
Okay. So after,
sorry, that was A wise ass
Sorry.
comment.
So before they went off the air, I don't know how much they showed.
I know, yeah.
But Ospreay came out with champagne. Speedball Mike Bailey came out. A bunch of people came out from the back.
We did see that.
Okay, came out with champagne, started spraying champagne and drinking in the ring. And then Joe got on the mic and said a few things to the crowd. He mentioned that it seems like every time he comes to Massachusetts, he wins titles. So he has to come back more often. So they kind of had just fun in the ring for maybe 10 minutes. And then after that, Tony came out and Tony was just kind of pumping tomorrow night. Like, if you had a great night tonight, come back tomorrow for Collision. The crowd started chanting pay-per-view at him. Because it would be nice if they'd finally listen, when they come to Boston, they always put on a hell of a show. But it would be nice if we finally got a pay-per-view. I was with the crowd on that one.
Yeah. Is there a top 3 list of crowd reactions? I mean, obviously the crowd is more to Mercedes than most crowds would be. Ospreay seemed to get a huge pop. Swerve showing up to me almost felt like the biggest pop, but I'm very curious for your assessment from being in there.
Yeah, I think you're right on point. Those 3, and then I would say Tony Storm. I was probably about 5 feet from where Tony Storm was, and the place, once kind of the arena kind of caught on that she was there, the place went nuts for her. I would say in the arena, when people started catching on that she was there, it was just as loud as when Mercedes came out for me, as the way I feel. People were pretty pumped to see her.
Did she cut a promo at all, off air or anything? Because to me, that was the only thing missing tonight, was a Tony Storm promo.
No, the lights went. She didn't say anything. The lights went dark, and they got her out of there quick. She was gone. It was
the crowd just seemed to get more into each match the longer the match went. And maybe not every match, but it struck me that Mercedes Athena had a bit of a slow build, and you could kind of tell early on they're probably going 20 minutes just based on the first 8. It shouldn't be that obvious, but if you watch wrestling long enough, you can kind of tell with the wrestlers who are in there. And then I was going to say the main event, Tony Schiavone thought it was the main event. The Will Ospreay Takeshita match. He almost signed off the show after Ospreay won. And Excalibur goes, "No, we got another match, Tony."
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Tony might say I wasn't. I was just, he might say Excalibur misinterpreted what he was saying, but I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, is it over? Is the show going to end 10 minutes early? But then that match too, there's some, the idea of spamming finishers and the kickouts and no selling, that's sort of a style right now that gets a really good crowd reaction, but comes with a price. I'm curious what you thought watching that in person. Everybody had an up close seat, basically. Did it work in the live crowd, or did you personally think they went a little far, kind of almost cheating, no selling so many big spots with all those kickouts rapid fire?
Are you talking about the Ospreay match?
Yeah. The closing few minutes of Ospreay.
Yeah. I don't know. When I'm watching at home and I'm on the couch and they do that, I'm kind of okay, here, all right, enough. Here we go.
Yep.
You know what I mean? In live in the arena, when you're kind of in the moment, people were going crazy. I was just kind of I think it might have been a better live experience than it was maybe at home. Because I know exactly what you're saying. Sometimes I'm all right, this is the 6th time we've kicked out of, it's how many more times are we going to do this?
It's like the horror movie villain who, gets killed but then isn't dead, and then they get up and they're killed but they're not dead. And it's it can work for a movie you watch every now and then, but you can't do that as a wrestling style. It feels, and that's why it's a question, because you're perfect. You're at home, I roll my eyes a little bit. In the building, I got caught up in it. And my point in framing the question that way, and your answer kind of affirmed where I was coming from. I think it is sort of addicting for wrestlers to do that, because they get that feedback, that positive feedback loop, but it doesn't mean it ought to be done as often as it is, because it does sort of set the bar in a different place than most matches can achieve it. And I don't know. Yeah. So you can get a little numb to it, especially if it's not the final match on the show.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with your sentiment on that.
And sorry to Zachman86 said Takeshita never hit Raging Fire, and Hidden Blade almost never gets pins on top end people. So what was there that really got kicked out of that shouldn't have? Chris, I see you shaking your head. Go ahead.
It's not about the kickouts. It's about the you get hit with a giant flipping roaring elbow and a knee strike and a German suplex, and you pop right up and hit your own. And that's Japanese style wrestling. And I did see someone earlier say, well, that's just AEW styles matches. But that doesn't mean it's good, right?
Precedent is not justification.
So I hate to do this, but WWE, it used to be that the only time anyone kicked out of a finisher was at WrestleMania. The whole year, finishers were the end of the match.
Yeah.
And then at the WrestleMania in the big matches, someone would kick out of a finisher, and it would mean so much more. Will Ospreay has 5 finishes. No one man needs 5 finishes. And sometimes he has to hit them all to win a match. So that doesn't tell me that Will Ospreay is a great wrestler. He is. But it doesn't tell me that he's a great wrestler. It tells me he can't win a match with his finisher. So that's the opposite of what you should want. Every one of those finishers should end the match. We're seeing tombstones being kicked out of. We're seeing buckle bombs and brain busters and stuff finish matches for some people and not for others. Like, there's no consistency and no logic to it. And that's what bugs me, because 50 kickouts doesn't make a good match. Ask Gargano and Ciampa about that.
Taylor, just switching back to your kind of experience in the building, elaborate more on the Hurt Business MJF dynamic. By the way, I thought it was funny that the crowd is chanting, "You're our scumbag," and Lashley's thinking they're calling MJF a scumbag. So Lashley leans in and goes, "Bring it on, talk louder," and it's like a pro MJF chant in a way. But what worked and what didn't about that in the building?
While I was watching that, I thought that match went a little too long. I feel like they should just be going in there and destroying people. Like, while I was sitting there, I was like, this match is going a little bit too long. But I will say, like, when Lashley first showed up, my first thought was, oh, Tony, do we really need Lashley? Like, do we really need another WWE guy? But I mean, it's working. I was wrong. I think they're playing him and Shelton the absolute right way. They should be playing them.
You think it's better than Jeff Jarrett?
But yeah, when I was for 12 minutes, I just kind of felt like the match was going a little bit too long. I felt like they should just went in, took care of business, and got out of there.
Yeah. As far as like the parade of women coming out, was this a crowd that's just like, oh yay, hot women? I'm a male wrestling fan. This is great.
Did you lose Wade?
No.
Did you? My mic should be on.
Yeah, I still hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Oh, Taylor, can you hear us?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you after I was done.
Oh, can you hear me now though?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Okay, well then great. All's well then as well.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. When the women were paraded out by MJF, did fans kind of roll their eyes and groan? Or they're like, oh, we're straight white, or we're straight male wrestling fans. We got to cheer for this. This is hot. This is great. I mean, because they played it for comedy. Shelton can't take his eyes off cleavage or whatever. And MJF's trying to get his attention. They played it sort of in a comedic way. But I was watching that going, is this gonna damage the cool factor that you just talked about, Taylor, with Bobby Lashley and Hurt Business? Because it's not, this is an improvement over Jeff Jarrett talking, for 10, 12 minutes in the ring about his history, and doing a whole, retirement tour thing. And I mean, there's a lot of respect about Jeff Jarrett, but like that didn't add to the cool factor of AEW, and they did move on from that. So yeah, did you think did it come across to you as it's kind of funny maybe, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but is this hurting the Hurt Business cool factor at this point?
I didn't think it hurt their cool factor. Like I said, it was the one thing in the building that kind of, when he brought the girls out, you could kind of feel in the arena like, oh boy, how are we going to react to this? You know what I mean? I feel like they kind of threaded that needle perfectly, the way that they kind of played it comedic with Shelton. I thought that was funny. I mean, in the building, I thought it was funny. They didn't kind of degrade them. It wasn't, the Godfather, trotting out the hoe train back in the day. You know what I mean? Which I was, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, please don't start a hoe train chant. You know what I mean? Like, please don't start, don't start a hoe train chant.
Yeah.
Which we didn't. Kudos Boston. I love Boston. Thank God we didn't do that. But yeah, like I said, I feel like they kind of played it. It could have really went sideways, and it didn't. My thought is it didn't go sideways. They kind of played it comedic with Shelton, and then they kind of did the backstage thing, which I thought was kind of a little bit funny too, the way they did it. But yeah, I thought it. They went for it. They went for it. You know what I mean? It could have been worse. It could have been better. I just thought it was all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the leading question. That doesn't mean you have to affirm the leading nature of it, because I was genuinely searching for your assessment of it in the crowds. As I was watching it, I was like, this feels like a little dangerous, but I think they did some things very well in it too. This is being executed better than, because I thought at the paper, like, oh, this is over. They're not, at least they're not going to pretend that Hurt Business would have anything to do with MJF. But I think even though it continues on, it's being played up like we're really working hard to. MVP is working hard to get MJF to see this, or his crew to see MJF as not a personal decision, but a business decision. And I don't know that I admit on camera. We can use MJF for our own benefit, but of course, that's what MJF's thinking too. And the idea is you're watching these two groups, and MVP thinks he can outsmart MJF. MJF thinks he can outsmart MVP, and they're going to pretend that their friendship will prevent either from doing that to one another. I mean, I find it interesting, and I don't know. Chris, where are you on this?
I don't understand it, honestly. MJF has never really functioned well as part of a group. I mean, he's led Pinnacle. What was it, Pinnacle? Yeah. And it just kind of felt weird at the time. And I don't understand why he wants to be subservient to MVP and potentially second fiddle to Bobby Lashley in a group where he doesn't really seem to fit. Like, I hear what you're saying about, oh, he's just going to use them, but that hasn't been stated by anyone, even on commentary. Even the commentators haven't said, oh, why MVP is having the wool pulled over his eyes or anything like that. So the average viewer isn't going to know that. The whole thing just feels weird to me.
So yeah, New Jersey Nick said, what is MJF's motivation for wanting to join Hurt Syndicate? So I think they've explained this better than you're giving them credit for, Chris, and I think the audience gets it more than you're giving them credit for, because MJF and MVP talked about going way back, and MVP was around. MJF is basically a rookie in the indie scene, and MJF is going, you guys are tag champs, I've been a world champ, we can help each other. I can help you retain the tag titles, maybe you can help me regain the world title. He thinks they're scumbags like him, and they can go into business together and help each other, because they don't have a singles wrestler going after a world title. There isn't really a conflict of interest. So I think they've told that story relatively clearly, and I think people are just wondering, well, I like that Shelton and Bobby are like, we don't want to deal with this guy. We're, the fans, they're not saying the fans like us, but the fans don't like MJF. They like them. And they're doing well on their own, but MVP's pushing it because he has this history with MJF. Taylor, are you still with us? Your screen blacked out.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can. Yep. Taylor, share anything else about the show that comes to mind that you experienced in the building that you think would be worth talking about.
I will say, I know kind of a running joke on here is the merch table. I will say they finally had a merch table with like 10 different shirt options. And when I left the arena, Colt Cabana and Jay Lethal was standing on the table of the merch, trying to sell merch to the fans, which I thought was a kind of a cool touch. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Sentences I did not expect to hear tonight.
Yeah.
No, I didn't either. Taylor, anything else? Anything else you want to
John Cena's dad was in the crowd, so if anyone's wondering if he's in Vegas yet, he is not in Vegas yet. He was front row, right behind Porzingis. Yeah.
But he had a great view.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I know, behind a 7-footer. No, but I mean, other than that, I will say the last few times I had a lot more negative things to say. I think, overall, this was a great experience, great show. The arena was great. I hope they keep it up. I'm glad that, I didn't have to listen to a Young Bucks promo in the ring. They kind of just came out and, did what they did. I don't know where they're going to go with that. I'm kind of Young Bucks fatigued at this point. So I'm hoping they figure out, something there. And I was a little bummed not to see Kenny, but I saw him last time, so I can't complain too much. But like I said, overall, it was a great show.
I want to ask how many of the crowd or what percent of the crowd knew who Athena was? Would you guess? And did she win over the crowd as the match progressed?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of the people there knew Athena. There were a lot of back and forth chants of CEO, Fallen Angel. And so I think Boston's a pretty educated town. I think when it comes to wrestling and the backstories. So yeah, I mean that everyone knew. And as soon as the graphic came up on screen and we knew that match was coming, the place was like I said, everyone was kind of ready to go.
How did the recognition of Josh Alexander go compared to Athena?
Not as good. To be honest, I'm not as up on Josh Alexander. I actually thought it was going to be Jack Perry was going to come out. I thought it was all right. The headgear kind of threw me a little bit. I think it's kind of awkward when he's wrestling with the headgear for me. And it seems like he might be joining the Don Callis family.
Right.
Which as I'm sitting there and I see he's kind of joining the Don Callis family, I'm like, if I'm Don Callis and I just see this guy lose, why do I want him part of my, you know what I mean? Why do I want him part of my crew now? Which I thought was a little, I don't know. I think it's always tough when you debut these guys in these tournaments and it's so clear that they're going to lose. I feel like it's a tough spot for them to kind of dig themselves out of. I wish him the best. Like I said, I'm not that up on him and kind of his career.
All right, very good. Chris, do you have any closing question for Taylor before we let him go?
No, I think that's covered pretty much all of it.
Taylor, thanks so much for joining us and spending time on the show, telling us about being in the building.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always enjoy, coming on and talking when they're in Boston. So I'll talk to you next time.
Sounds great. Appreciate it. If you want to be an on-site correspondent like Taylor just was, drop me a line, Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. Just put the date in the city in the subject line for Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown. By the way, speaking of housekeeping, we are planning to do tentatively a post-collision show tomorrow night. I probably won't be hosting or co-hosting, but working that out. So look for that alert on our YouTube page or a link in the collision report tomorrow night. And then Friday night, I'll be back covering SmackDown with a post show here on the PWTorch YouTube channel and on our Wade Keller post show podcast feed to download on demand. And then, of course, WrestleMania weekend, we'll have Wrestling Night in America, the post pay-per-view and PLE format. Brandon LeClaire hosting. Greg Parks will be with him one of the nights, maybe two, and doing shows right after WrestleMania ends each night. So join us here for a streak of shows on the PWTorch YouTube channel, or download the shows on the Wade Keller post-show feed or the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. Subscribe to both to be sure you don't miss out on any of them. And then for PWTorch VIP members, I'll be hosting, as we've done dating back to 2003, the VIP exclusive Roundtable podcast after WrestleMania. Todd Martin and Rich Fan will be part of the mix this coming weekend. Cool. Okay. So, Chris, since we've talked about it quite a bit already, let's finish talking about the MJF Hurt Syndicate storyline as it's progressing here. Shea Penn noted, MJF stated his motivation last week. He wants shortcuts, and they'll provide that for him. Everyone looks like they're having fun with this, and it's adding some nice character work for everyone involved. So, yeah, I mean, to me, this is a way for MJF to be this is on brand for him. He's a manipulative character. He's good at what he does. He's got a love for crowd adulation wherever he can get it. But he finds a way to make those fans feel stupid for cheering him because they were cheering him. He goes, "Thank you," and then later on he's insulting them. I don't know. I mean, I think the chemistry with MJF and MVP is better than I expected. They're allowing Lashley to be a guy who even if he ultimately agrees to this, it's because MVP kind of twisted his arm and he respects MVP, not because he's a sucker or doesn't know any better or didn't see it coming when there's a turn. And Shelton's just kind of, not a comedy sidekick, but I'm not as worried about protecting him. They just established he likes, certain type of women and watches. The problem with this, and some people in the chat pointed it out, and I thought of it watching it, is, are we to think Lashley and Shelton can't get whoever they want if we're supposed to pretend they're single or married and just have an open relationship or cheat on their wives all the time? Whatever the situation is that we're supposed to imagine here. Do we imagine they need MJF helping them? Like that's like that would have been my thought if I'm Lashley or Shelton. Just go, Lashley could go, "I'm a married man, first of all. You're trying to get me in trouble." I don't know. I don't recall Shelton's marital set, but Shelton could just go, "If we want women, we can get them, MJF. The last thing we need is you going out there and scouting for us. No offense, ladies." And they could have gotten a pop for that. This idea that Shelton is like, "Oh my God, there's a woman in my presence." That's something you do for some, as a gag, and we might roll our eyes at it, but some nerdy, balding, chubby, short guy or something that the pro wrestling promoters would think, this will be funny. We're going to have a guy who looks like he can never get a woman like this, and then we're going to tempt him with that. So it was a little weird in that sense, Chris.
It almost felt like a Vince Russo segment, honestly. The only way I might have been okay with it is if Anthony Bowens had been there instead of Shelton, because that would have been actively funny. Or Mark Davis, it turns out. But it just, there was no need for it. Yeah, okay, MJF is a scumbag. But with everything we have going on in the world right now, the last thing I want to see on my TV is people treating women as a commodity to be offered back and forth as an incentive for something. Especially when Hurt Syndicate as a group is one of the few black groups in professional wrestling that isn't smiling and dancing down to the ring. And it's tried to sort of elevate a black faction beyond the normal stereotypes. And here we are with a stereotype. I mean, Shelton Benjamin just seemed like an absolute clown out there. And I don't mind the odd laugh here and there, but the characters, Bobby Lashley, I think, was perfect. He played it perfectly. He was just stoic. He seemed like a complete brick wall, not emotionless, but clearly not interested in anything that was going on. MJF just feels like a used car salesman. I keep expecting him to slap the roof of an MJF and going, "You can fit so many titles in this, baby." It just feels wrong in all the ways.
But is that a bad thing or what? Or is that a feature, not a flaw? I mean, is that what MJF is going for as a heel, genuinely wanting people not to like him? And he's a transparently, deceptive scumbag, untrustworthy used car salesman guy. No offense to the honest used car salesman.
That's not the character that he's been portraying. He's not a slimy businessman. He's a shrewd businessman. And he's in the business of having his charges hurt people. He's not there to sort of trick people into things or be a scumbag. He's just strong and devious. It doesn't fit. It feels like a complete mismatch. I feel like this is going to end in a Lashley and MJF match where if MJF wins, he gets to join. Lashley will say something along the lines of, "You need to prove that you belong here," and that's where we'll end up. But I don't know. Even without this segment tonight, the whole thing just felt off to me. It doesn't feel like a good marriage to me.
Yeah. Where do you think it goes? I mean, I think they gotta combine for at least a week or a month or two, right? At this point, they put so much into it, or did they just? Shelton gave a thumbs down, Lashley gave a thumb down, MVP gets mad. I mean, I don't think they're going to break up MVP and Lashley and Shelton. So yeah, I mean, I don't know where it's going. That doesn't mean it won't be satisfying. To me, it's not obvious the path that will ultimately make sense and have a payoff.
I'm not entirely sure how this goes because you can't really have MJF just continually getting rejected unless he's going to come out on top. MJF as a character can't really handle being humiliated by 3 tweener faces. Mm-hmm. Maybe MJF comes in with his own faction. Maybe, like I said, he has the match with Lashley and Lashley beats him, or MJF cheats, and because they've signed the deal, they have to let him in. And then for a little while, it seems to be working, and then they all realize he's garbage and kick him out. I do think this ends with MJF having another faction with him, but I don't think it's going to be Hurt Syndicate long term.
Yep. All right. There's some discussion on Josh Alexander's debut. Chris, what do you think is this? Well, actually, Taylor asked, why would Callis be interested in Alexander? He might be interested in him because he's like, you know what? He just lost. He's in need of someone to guide him, but he's got talent. I can give him that edge, i.e. cheating or interference to help him win or just coach him to win. And he knows his history, which is, is a, top guy in TNA and elsewhere. And Excalibur talked about Hangman and Alexander crossing paths in ROH, sharing a locker room, but not wrestling each other, kind of like Athena and Mercedes earlier. So I'm fine with Alexander debuting this way. I'm fine with it. I'm not ecstatic with it, but I don't know that AEW needs another guy that they introduce as a top guy. Like that, I honestly, I don't know that he's someone who should be added to the mix of people who are like, oh God, how, they have too many people who are just top guys. I'm not sure that Josh needs to be introduced instantly that way. He can earn it over time and get there. I don't think this loss, a leverage pin in a very competitive 13-minute match with Hangman, disqualifies him from getting there. But I don't think he jumps off the screen immediately as that guy.
No, and I don't think he is close to being that guy. He's talented in the ring, no question.
Yeah.
He had a good run in TNA. He had a bit of an emotional connection with the fans there because he'd been there for so long. He came up through the ranks and he earned a spot. But I don't think that carries over. And he's got to, if he wants to have that spot again, he needs to earn it again. For a moment, I was wondering, especially after the segment with the Bucks, could the wild card have been Brandon Cutler? And just to go that sort of route with sort of lobbing Hangman a softball win in the tournament to try and carry him through. But Josh Alexander was always the likely choice. I don't think this was a great match. It didn't really showcase what he can do either. I think there would have been better choices for that if they really wanted to give him a sort of a showcase. And we might get that in the next week or two. It's a weird fit for Don Callis, though. You've already got Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher, who in a lot of ways duplicate each other. Mm-hmm. And Josh Alexander's a bit more mat-based, but he also doesn't really seem to fit in as a third wheel in that faction, or a fourth wheel if Trent ever comes back. So it's kind of a weird decision. Plus, you still got Mark Davis in that allegedly as well. But I don't hate the heel turn. I think he's fine as a heel. I don't think he's going to be at the top of the card unless he does what Swerve did and forces his way up there.
Right. Yeah.
But yes, a lot of people lose on their debut, but Hangman had to win that match, and I don't think losing to Hangman buries you irreparably on night one. So I think he'll be fine.
New Jersey Nick says if there was ever going to be a guy to get lost in the AEW mix, it's Josh Alexander. Yeah. All right, let's go to John, another caller here. We'll bring him onto the show. John, welcome. Long live Rock is your subtag. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Hey, good to see you guys. How you doing?
Good. Yeah. What's on your mind about Dynamite tonight?
Hey, I'm glad to get a hold of you guys tonight with Chris, since you're here, because of all that happened tonight or today or yesterday or however you want to look at it in Japan, in New Japan. We'll get to that in a minute. I've been kind of falling out of wrestling recently. I kind of lost interest to some extent. I'm not into WWE. It's not my thing. I just don't get into it. I'm more of a New Japan guy. I like AEW. I like more of the sports take, the sports approach to it. I like a nice storyline, but I don't like it to be overly soap opera. and I just don't know. There's something about WWE. I just can't get into it. I watch the pay-per-views on Peacock, and it just doesn't grab me. So AEW has been my thing for a domestic product, but it's been kind of hit and miss over the last couple of years.
Since it's a Dynamite post show, I'll ask you, was tonight closer to what you're looking for from AEW?
Oh, this is absolutely what I'm looking for from a presentation standpoint. Is it realistic week to week? No, but for a special episode from Boston, which is one of their best markets, makes a lot of sense how they did it. I really liked the opening match. I was looking forward to that one. I just wish Tony would stop saying girls and
Tony Schiavone.
Stop calling them. Stop calling them women's wrestlers, because when you've got two wrestlers of the caliber of Mercedes and Athena, they're just great wrestlers. There's no other qualifications needed. Mm-hmm. They are just objectively, if there's such a thing for a subjective assessment as my belief in who's best, but they're great wrestlers. I mean, they have the athleticism. They tell a story. It's just good stuff. They know the psychology. They can tell the moments in between the big moves. They sell the big moves to the other one. I love the sequence of the three amigos, and then Mercedes goes for the fourth one. It gets blocked by Athena. Athena then goes for the three power bombs, goes for the fourth one. It gets blocked by encountered by Mercedes. I thought that was superb.
Yeah. Just
really, really good stuff put together. And I thought it was just really well done. I was surprised that it was a clean finish, honestly. I'm glad, John, because it was a leverage pin, roll up or a jackknife, whatever. But I mean, it was clean. It was clean, but it wasn't the type of finish where you're like, well, they certainly made it clear one wrestler's better than the other. But I mean, it would have been a match where I could see you watching it, John, thinking, oh, we're no way we're getting anything close to a clean finish. They're going to want to protect Athena with her winning streak and a ROH title. So it was it's the brave booking. Sometimes one wrestler beats another, and they're both really good, and you could see it going either way, and that's what we got here. John, what else is on your mind about tonight's Dynamite specifically? And then if you want to throw to Chris for a New Japan question, we can do that. Well, I thought it was good that one of the things I liked is, and I wish they would book it more this way, not necessarily always big name talent going against each other, but matches where I don't know who's going to win way ahead of time.
Yeah.
If you compare this to their last pay-per-view, which I almost ordered, but my dog just passed away, so I was going through a lot of drama and trauma with that, so I ended up not getting it, and I'm glad I didn't, because it sounded like that in the main event was a train wreck, and want no part of that. This was more booking of like what I like. You don't know who's going to win. I would like to see them do it with more mid-card talent, a young talent against an older talent, two young talents, do it with some of the younger female talents, and just have a winner between two competitors who you don't know is going to win, not just Will Ospreay taking on somebody who knows going to put on a good show. Kind of like they did with Gates of Agony, which I thought they put on a good show. MVP did a good job putting those guys over. I thought that they did a good job, but it was a typical AEW long match. You had no doubt who was going to win. I thought the Hurt Syndicate, did a good job of putting them over and giving those two guys some counter moves. And
John, I know you're first time caller. I hate to interrupt, but I don't know that everybody wants to hear you march through the whole show. Like, give us a little briefer, just because we're at the hour mark of the show. So what anything short you want to kind of bring up to throw to us to respond to, or anything else you want to bring up, and then we can get to the new show.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I mean, it's.
Have you guys? Do you think that AEW's put on a better a tournament than this one. I think this is the best one because they've had guys in the matches who are competitive, and you're not really sure who's going to win.
Chris, what do you think?
I hadn't really considered it, but it's an interesting point. I think first and foremost, you need to look at the fact that the entrants in this tournament, for the most part, have been top quality guys. All of the current champions were omitted, which when you phrase it like that, it makes sense why the current champions were omitted. You've got basically all of the top non-champion talent was in the tournament. The matches have been good. Yeah, sure, we expected Mike Briscoe to lose. That was probably the most obvious. And Beast Mortos, was he in this one? No, that was the other one. But yeah, I think there's a good argument to be made that with the possible exception of the first Continental Classic, this was probably the best tournament I can think of.
John.
Yeah, I think so too. I really enjoyed the Ospreay Takeshita match. It was a typical like Japanese style match, which nobody respects anybody's finisher or maneuvers that set up a finisher would logically set up an end of a match. Mm-hmm. But it's very good for its style and the two dynamic personalities and complete wrestlers. Do you think, Chris? Two questions on New Japan. Number one, do you think part of the solution to now losing Naito and losing Bushi, but losing Jeff Cobb and all the other losses they've had, do you think that possibly somehow making a trade for Takeshita would be a possible solution? Because I think he would be massive in New Japan.
I mean, he's going to be massive wherever he goes. Takeshita would not be interested in that, I don't think. He's pretty happy about having 3 contracts right now, and he seems to be doing a nice job of juggling those 3. He did just drop his Never Openweight Championship, somewhat surprisingly, in my opinion, No, that wasn't. He didn't drop it, did he? It was Ishii that beat Gabe Kidd. Forget I didn't mention that. What are you talking about?
Mark for edit.
Yes. I don't see Takeshita committing to anyone while he can still carry and cash 3 paychecks, and I don't know why he would want to. I do think New Japan is going to have to do a lot of rebuilding. Once again, they've lost big names, and those big names are not going to put over anybody on the way out, which has been a massive failing of that company for the last year or so. Jeff Cobb is more of a loss than I think is going to be evident right now. Naito is, of course, a huge loss. Bushi, there's going to be some repairs needed. I don't think it's going to be immediate, but you've got so many of the young generation ready to take the next step, and now they're going to have to because there's nobody else.
What else, John?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would think at some point Tony Khan would have to take some responsibility, wouldn't you think, for what's going on? He's raided the roster, and like you said, Gato or whoever's in charge is not making people like Okada put anybody over. He could have put over any of the young talents on his way out. Didn't put one of them over, and nothing's worked. How much do you think Tony Khan owes some kind of at least spiritual debt or something to New Japan, who he's built his product off their back, and he's pretty much has ravaged them to the point of where they're at now?
And I'll add to that question, Chris. Who would still be in New Japan who's not if AEW never existed? Would Okada have just gone to WWF or WWE instead? For instance. Yeah.
So the thing that people have to remember with that is that Okada had rarely wrestled in the U.S. period before AEW came around because of the sour taste in his mouth from TNA in part. I don't think Okada would have left. Ospreay probably wouldn't either. Ospreay was learning Japanese. He was ready to move over there. It's hard to say for sure. Tony Khan I am surprised New Japan continues to work with him. It was about maybe a year or so ago now. Tanahashi released a sort of state of NJPW thing where he talked about all these things that were going to change and how they were going to get more out of this AEW promotion and partnership yet. Just you wait and see. And we haven't seen it. They're getting 2 AEW guys in Best of the Super Juniors this year instead of 1, but we saw nobody in the G1. We're getting triple contracted or double contracted wrestlers now, which is good to see, but it still isn't really replacing the fact that 2 of the best wrestlers on planet Earth left New Japan to sign with AEW within a month of each other. I believe they even showed up on in the same month. It's just it doesn't make sense to me that this is happening still. Gabe Kidd cut a ridiculous promo in the ring on Tony Khan and the relationship between AEW and New Japan and how AEW is just taking them to the cleaners time and time again. And I was so hopeful it was going to lead to an invasion angle with Gabe Kidd bringing over some New Japan guys and turning Forbidden Door into something with a bit more animosity behind it. That petered out into nothing. There's a chance it happens this year in London. I'm not sure that I'm going to give them that benefit of the doubt, but for sure, a lot of the lack of big names in New Japan is because of AEW.
All right, John. Any closing words?
No, I just want to say I'm glad the Pistons are back in the playoffs. I'm glad we're going to push the Knicks for at least. Well, we're going to win a playoff game this year. I feel fairly confident. We haven't won a playoff game since 2008, I think. So it'd be nice if we finally do win one. So other than that, hey, great show, guys. Have a wonderful WrestleMania weekend. Chris, enjoy the weather up in Canada. And guys, take care. Thanks.
John, thanks for checking in and calling. I appreciate your opinions and your good questions to Chris, too. Got us to explore a topic I wanted to anyway, and you did a good job with it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Take it easy. Bye.
By the way, this is a good time to let people know, since we're entering a season where AEW, Raw, SmackDown, WrestleMania are going to be going head-to-head with prime-time NBA and NHL playoff games. And we have, not only for pro wrestling, but also for pro sports on this show, a no-spoiler policy. Nothing that John said is a problem here, but as a courtesy to people watching live on YouTube who might record the game, they like wrestling more, they wanted to see it, but they're going to speed through the game on DVR afterwards. Like me, for instance, don't bring up results of games that are occurring the evening of the shows we do, especially my teams, seriously, but really any of them. Let's just let people not have those spoilers. If you're talking about a game from yesterday or someone who's in the playoffs, fine. Obviously we can talk sports here. It's kind of fun to do sidebars. I am rooting for the Knicks. Sorry, Joe, but Karl Anthony Towns, we love him here, even though I'm not sad to see him go. I think it was a good trade for us, and will pay off dividends as time goes on. But he's a hard guy to root against, even if there's some flaws in his games. So I'm hoping he does well with that. But I mean, the Knicks are the third best team at best in the East. Chris?
I am heavily rooting for a Mavericks Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. I need to see that.
I was like, why? And I'm like, oh, now I get it. Yeah, it's not going to happen, but.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But my team they couldn't even tank properly this year. They were right in the mix for Cooper Flag, and then they decided to go on a winning streak for some reason by playing their kids. And I mean, sure, if Brandon Ingram does play next season, the Raptors look like they could have a good team. There's a lot of talk about potentially being able to get one of the unhappy free agents. But the Raptors are just they'll find a way to mess it up again. But yeah, I like the Wolves team. They look like they could be in a good spot. It's hard for me to root against OKC though.
Yeah. Yep. Well, the Wolves are the OKC Killers. They lost 3 games this year, and 2 of them were against us, something like that, for over a 2-month period. Us being the Timberwolves. I'm looking forward to Anthony Edwards on the national stage against the Lakers. There was a a podcast that I listened to on the Timberwolves earlier today, and they were it was actually a great comparison because they're pro wrestling fans too. It's called Flagrant Howls, which is a good name for a podcast about Timberwolves. And Phil Mackey brought up Randy Orton, the Legend Killer, and how Anthony Edwards is making that his gimmick. Taking out Jokic in Denver, and also taking out his idol on Phoenix, Kevin Durant, last year, and now he's going to be aiming for LeBron James this year. It's going to be a really fun series. I mean, the national media, it's insane. They know nothing about their analysis on the Timberwolves is awful. Kendrick Perkins are talking about Anthony Edwards being a great clutch player. Anthony Edwards, until the last few weeks, was the second worst clutch player in the history of the NBA. Only Tony Kukoc from the 90s was worse, since they've been keeping that stat. That is like a fatal flaw. That is why we don't have 55 or 57 wins. It's because Edwards is terrible in the final 2 minutes because he hogs the ball and doesn't make good decisions with it, and he's easily double teamed. Now, he's gotten better about it in recent weeks, but you couldn't have a worse national take than that and expose yourself as having only watched a couple games recently for the Wolves. And the national media is full of that when it comes to like Rudy Gobert too. So it's going to be fun to break the ignorant national narrative on the Timberwolves on the national stage against the Lakers, starting head-to-head with WrestleMania Night 1. I do not like this late WrestleMania schedule when the Wolves are good enough to be in a primetime playoff game against the Lakers.
Kendrick Perkins is the Kevin Nash of the NBA. He was decent in his time, but nobody really wants to hear what he has to say now.
Apparently people want to hear what he has to say, but sometimes what he has to say, I don't know. All right. Anyway, so let's go to an email here that'll hit some other topics from JB in Detroit. Wade, do you have any actual do you have any reporting on the actual status of Hook? He threw up during his match last week, and I'm curious if it had anything to do with him being taken out of the Trios Take match in storyline tonight. I'm curious if Taz was actually with him at the hospital, or if they made that up. Let me see. I lost my spot. Or if they made the call to have Taz sit out tonight for kayfabe purposes. I'd assume the former. The second time in 3 weeks, the Death Riders had to take a wrestler out in kayfabe, with Jay White being the previous wrestler, not including Pac's injury himself. So my understanding is Hook had concussion symptoms. I don't have a confirmation that's a diagnosis, but that's the belief, that Hook was dealing with concussion and had to sit out because of concussion protocol. Don't think it's serious. I honestly don't know if Taz is in the hospital with him for real. I highly doubt it, because it just sounds like got a concussion last week. He isn't cleared to wrestle this week. We're going to say the Death Riders beat him up storyline wise. So that, I think that's a safe assumption, that Taz wasn't with him in the hospital, and it was just selling it. But maybe Taz had a conflict and it was a happy accident that he couldn't be there and they could sell it. So hopefully I get a little more information on that. Number two, the crowd came hot out of the gate even before the first match. The pop for Ospreay and Takeshita's graphic was one of the loudest responses for simply putting a graphic on a screen that I can remember in any company. I have a feeling that we'll be running back Monet Athena at some point down the line, of course. Referring back to the flagship yesterday, by the way, he's referring to the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast, our Blue Logo show. That's audio podcast only. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Zach Hadorn from Sports Illustrated and Brass Ring Media, former PWTorch assistant editor, joined me. And we covered a lot of WrestleMania topics, of course, but also AEW. Just search Wade Keller in your podcast app, subscribe to the Blue Logo, and that'll get you the flagship from yesterday. And then the red logo will get you the audio versions of these shows and some other content. So he goes, referring to the flagship, let me find my spot here. I have a feeling we'll be running back Monet. Oh, yeah. I'm actually fine with their first matchup being rather quickly in Athena's first real proper AEW run, as it was in a tournament format, and it can easily be heated up to the necessary big match level. I think that it's even possible that Hayter beats Monet next week and we get Storm Hayter and Monet Athena at All In. I think it's possible, not likely. Good topic. Was this too soon to feature Athena Mercedes? Does it define down Athena a little bit, that in a meta sense, only in a meta sense, that AEW gave away this first ever singles match between this historically successful ROH Women's Champion and Mercedes, who I think they said she's 19-1 since winning the title in 19-0. So was this, did it not give enough? I mean, should this headline and be a bigger deal, Chris, or is it fine?
Oh, Rich fan is going to hate me for this. I don't think you can make Athena headline right now. She just hasn't been on Dynamite in well over a year and a half. People don't really know who she is. And yes, it was a good match. And yes, people who know Athena, know what she's been doing, knew that this was going to be a great match. But with Mercedes in Boston, you had to open with it. I've always said when I'm producing shows, comedy shows and so on, the second most important show on the slot on the show is the opener. Mm-hmm. And generally that's where you want to put your second strongest act, because that you have to get the crowd interested and into the show and make them want to cheer. Mm-hmm. I thought the match was great. There was a spot in this match where Athena leaned backwards between the top and the middle rope, mm-hmm. and then took Mercedes over in a power slam. I've never seen it before.
Yep.
And it is so hard to find something I've never seen before in 35 years of watching wrestling. It's more than that.
And you know what? I'm nervous to say that in case it's like a move that was done 6 times in some New Japan tournament I didn't watch. Tony Schiavone has said, I've never seen that before. And it's like, Tony, you've been doing that for 20 years. You know, like when you take time off and come back, you can get caught. When you say you've never seen it before, Chris, it's never been done before. Well, maybe in ROH. So yeah, that was a standout moment when you can, and it didn't look like overly dangerous or spectacular. It just was memorable, and it didn't look overly fancy either. It looked like sort of a practical thing to do, you know, slam her on the ring apron and use the middle rope to kind of add a different kind of leverage to it. So I like that.
I find that as I get older as a wrestling fan, I like spots that look impressive, but also you can tell they're safe. There's a move that somebody used on LFG this week, which is a sort of a powerbomb pickup into a power slam that is remarkably safe, but just looks so nice. And I remember just seeing that move the first time and thinking that is gorgeous. But yeah, the only thing I did want to mention about this match, at no point did I hear anyone on the commentary team talking about Mercedes and Billy Starks and the interaction that they had and how that relates to Athena and the whole angle with Athena and Billy Starks from Ring of Honor and how long those two were together as a group. They never brought that up once, and that's kind of confusing to me. That seems like a tailor-made way you could have added some import to this match.
Yeah, good point. I don't know if that's a strategy because they want to save it for like Dynamite canon or Collision canon or something, or they just didn't want to overwhelm people with facts, or they just didn't think about it. Ramen Noodle says, I love the spot where Mercedes held the front face lock as she rolled out of the ring into the statement maker. She is a goat. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There was some fun spots in there, even when they were a little clunky on some reversal of a powerbomb or something, whatever, the hoister.
Tombstone, yeah.
Tombstone, okay. That happens. I don't count what you don't want everything to look just perfect. Wrestlers are struggling to get out of stuff. It's more realistic when there's a little slip up and it looks like it's not just cooperation the whole way. I don't want to see a whole match of that, but if it happens once or twice in a match, I mean, someone slips on the rope, someone slips out of the grip, that's going to happen. I mean, it's I don't pick on that.
Well, look at the Ospreay match. He slipped on the rope. There was also the Blue Thunder Bomb that Takeshita hit. Ospreay practically leapt into that. It was blatant.
Yeah.
And that match was phenomenal as it was, but
yeah,
I would much rather a slip than blatant cooperation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I love that Hangman stepped up to Okada when Okada called him a bitch tonight. It shows that Hangman isn't to be joked or trifled with, and that even Okada fears Hangman when he backed down. Yeah, Okada's just been being the class clown, and then someone stood up to the class clown bully, and Okada's gulp. As soon as Hangman turned around, he looked more serious. It showed fear, but it also showed Okada's a goof. But you know what? There is a serious version of him. All you've seen him in if the only version you've seen of him is in Dynamite, you've seen him rise to the occasion in big matches. But as a person, he hasn't shown a lot of range. He's just the class clown making faces and saying bitch and having a frivolous fun. But this did kind of ease him into something where if you say the wrong thing to him or you stand up to him, he can kind of flip a switch and be a little more serious. And I think that's going to be the key for him becoming more valuable to AEW than he has been.
I'm still out on this whole Okada thing. I get that he wants to have some fun, and I can't really begrudge him that. I remember I wrote down in my notes, remember when he was the best wrestler in the world? Pepperidge Farm remembers. It's just, it seems so long ago now. Who was asking for the Bucks to come back and go straight back into the hanging around with Okada backstage thing? Was this on anybody's wish list for 2025? Because it sure as heck wasn't on mine. And then to go back to courting Hangman, which we've also seen before. I get they like working with their friends, but I don't know. I think they could have found something better to do.
I disagree a little bit on that, and that I think we'd be critical of them if they didn't revisit and kind of like put a period at the end of what was going on. Like you disappear for a while and then we forget all the stuff that was happening. They're trying to tie up loose ends, you know, and I think there's a logic to it. They're snakes. They're kind of MJF like Hangman. Everything is fine with us, right? You know, it's like goes to my I say when someone says it's all good, it's almost never all good, and we got that again tonight. And so to me, it's the Bucks pretending that Hangman hasn't grown apart from them, and they're like, "Oh, we forgive you for leaving us behind last year. That's the last time we saw you, but it's all good." It's like, well, you know, it's not all good, but they know Hangman is a powerful ally, and they're trying to, you know, suck up to him and get him to serve their purposes, and it's pretty transparent. And Hangman's not buying it, and that helps protect Hangman's character. So I think that's well done. The idea that they want, you know, then they're just saying, you know, if we hang out with Moxley, then if he's with us, he's not against us, and that's better. We share similar purposes in terms of what we want to achieve for AEW. So I don't know. I mean, I was glad that they followed up again on it this week. I don't in 2 months. You know, I don't really want them still doing this, but I'm fine to, if you're going to reintegrate after time off, trying to tie up loose ends and not just, you know, do a J.R. Ewing that was just a whole lost season that doesn't count.
I would have much preferred it if they had just addressed it and then Okada had just said, yeah, I'm moving on. And then they could have found someone else to have as their whipping boy or whatever.
Yeah. All right. This is still JB from Detroit. I wasn't very high on the idea of debuting Josh Alexander as a wild card against Hangman in the first round of the Owen Hart tournament because I didn't think that debuting Alexander with a loss was ideal, and obviously Hangman couldn't lose. That being said, after the match, I believe that Alexander was elevated in his loss with a very strong match and protection by being pinned with an inside cradle. My only qualm is that Tony Khan has been far too reliant on inside cradle small package finishes lately. True. Also, credit to Tej from last week calling Alexander as being the new member of the Callis family, whether he was joking or not. I think we agree, Chris. This was a fine use of Josh Alexander. He was competitive for a while. He's not going to be a top guy, and he can be. Maybe he joins Callis as a heel. Maybe he doesn't and feuds with Takeshita or Fletcher. So, yeah. Okay, Nick Wayne. I don't think that Nick Wayne's response to Christian came across as heelish. I know that the assumption is that the patriarchy will turn on Christian, making him a face so he can team with Adam Copeland for one final run. But that isn't the vibe that I got from tonight's segment. If Wayne turned on Christian now, I'd almost say that he is justified to an extent, and it's never great to turn a face off of being rejected by heels. That being said, I do understand that in this case, fans will likely cheer Christian out of respect for his most recent multi-year heel work mastery. I don't know if they know consistently what they're doing or they keep changing their mind. Christian said, I left you alone for a month to see if you could, survive on your own. Nick accused him of not finishing the plan because he was scared. He didn't want Copeland to win a title the world title in AEW before him. Who came across more heelish and who came across more rational and sympathetic, Chris?
I think they all both came across as heels. I don't think Wayne was trying to be a face there. And I had a similar thought. I thought that instead of signaling a separation tonight, almost seemed like it was a sign that Nick Wayne is progressing and is ready to move up the pecking order in the company, if not in the patriarchy. He's going to come back from Japan a changed person in and out of storyline. Trips to Japan, especially in Best of the Super Juniors, where he's going to face off against some absolute masters of that craft. He's going to learn so much. I don't know if they've announced the blocks yet, but you've got the likes of Hiromu and Ishimori and I can't think of the guy's name there for a second. The King of Funky Style. Anyway, there are a lot of veterans that are going to teach him so much that he just can't get over here. When he comes back, he's in the perfect position to benefit greatly from this, even more than Gates of Agony did when they went over for the tag league. Mm-hmm. So I think this is setting that up, not for him to break away, but for him to sort of move up the ranks and be like Christian's prize weapon that he throws at people.
Ramen Noodle says, as a parent myself, Wayne sure seemed like the heel. Zachman86 says Hiromi Ishimori. Taguchi. All right. Taguchi. Yep. Sadler Vision 3 says, this reminds me of Judgment Day Finn, where it feels like the leader that is seemingly going to be turned on is acting like more of the heel. I have no idea where either story is going right now. Again, don't hold it against angles if you don't know where they're going, unless there's a track record with the booker of being undisciplined and shoddy with their storytelling with bad payoffs, and then it's fair to be skeptical. But sometimes they're taking you on a ride and they don't want it to be obvious where it's going to land. As long as in the end it all makes sense. That's how I feel about the Punk, Heyman, Reigns, Seth situation. I don't know I think some people have certitude about what's going to happen. I don't. I think there's some things that are more likely than others. But as long as whatever happens, we look back and go, oh, those pieces fall into place now. I interpreted that one way, but I can see how it could be interpreted this way. And it all falls into place. I'd like that. All right, Efren dropped in to do a super chat just to say, yay, PWTorch. Efren, thank you. You can hear him on our 10 and 15 years ago flashback episodes of the flagship. He'd call in back in the day when Jason Powell and I hosted every week in the early days of the flagship, and was a really good caller back then. And maybe sometime he'll call us and not just send us money and say, hey, but I'll take that too. Thank you, Efren. Always good to hear from you. Derek Mitchell on the Nick Wayne thing says, Nick Wayne is going to come back from his New Japan Pro Wrestling excursion a better wrestler like AEW. Beat you over the head about Anna Jay's excursion in Stardom. So I don't know. I mean, kind of, what you're saying, Chris, this part of the story is send him away and have that be part of his growth. All right, what do we make of Grand Slam Mexico and Mexico City being announced for June? AEW has certainly gone international in 2025 with trips to Canada, Australia, and trips planned to England, Scotland, and Mexico. It does make sense that they're making a play in foreign markets with WWE moving a minority of their content to Netflix worldwide. Chris, what do you think of Grand Slam Mexico? I mean, it's part of AEW. When I say this was an on-brand show for AEW, I mean, their brand is, we're an international company. We acknowledge other international companies. And here it's a CMLL, alliance. What do you think?
It's definitely good for them to get that exposure. People in the US and Canada, for that matter, really don't understand the culture of pro wrestling in Mexico unless they're also fans of Mexican pro wrestling. It's huge. And CMLL has a huge history down there as well. So they're going to get a lot of eyes on the product that otherwise might not have been on it. I'm not a fan of the lucha style. There are some luchadors that I enjoy watching. The most obvious being Hechicero, who is just ridiculously good at everything. I'll watch it because it's got some potential for some very interesting matches. But if you've seen one guy doing 17 vaults off the ropes into an arm drag, you've seen them all. So I think it's going to be a good show. I think it's going to get some eyes on the product, and ultimately that's the goal.
You just made a lot of enemies, Chris. All right. Let's see. MJF hiring escorts for Shelton and Bobby to earn his way into the Hurt Syndicate was certainly a choice. I give the clearly weird angle a bit of a pass, as it's something that MJF's character would actually do, and I think is acceptable. I really hope that the payoff for the story is a match between MJF and Bobby. I mean, the question is not if that happens. The question is how far down the line does it happen? Do we get there really quickly, or do we go through MJF, MVP trying to apologize for MJF and control MJF and manage a dysfunctional family for 2, 3, 4 months before we get to that match?
And is it the payoff to the feud, or is it a stepping stone?
Yeah. All right. How significant into history is AEW becoming the longest running episodic wrestling programming in TNT TBS history? I mean,
it depends who you ask.
Totally. I mean, it counts, but I mean, I guess 6:05 Eastern isn't prime time. I mean, World Championship Wrestling was on TBS on Saturday nights. It's called Saturday Night for a very, very long time. So I guess prime time starts at 7 or 8 Eastern. So, I mean, I guess that's technically right now that I think about it. But I mean, I say it as sort of a technicality. There's been a lot of wrestling shows that have been on a very long time. But with all the caveats and all that, to outlast Nitro, even if Tony Khan was friends with Eric Bischoff and Eric loved the product, it still would be like an achievement that counts for something, and I think is worth drawing attention to. I think they stopped short tonight of gloating. I think they were celebrating and proud. They were, I mean, it bordered on it. I mean, I think there was a sense of spiking the football a little bit. But I mean, they outlasted Nitro. Nitro is a historically significant chapter in pro wrestling history. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Well, what do you think, Chris?
The significance of Nitro was not in how long it lasted. It was in what it was able to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yes. And I mean, people now who weren't, watching wrestling or even alive during the Monday Night Wars might not realize how short a span Nitro was on the air.
Has anyone counted the number of weeks?
I believe there was a podcast that mentioned how long they were ahead of the ratings. I'm not sure how long it was. I also don't know what episode it was tonight. I think if Eric Bischoff were working for AEW, I don't think they would have done as much as they did tonight. I think there's a bit of a sort of Tony Khan flexing here.
Yeah. Oh, no question about. The question is how obvious was that, and was it unbecoming? But yeah, I mean, yeah. All right. Double or Nothing has to be anarchy in the arena with some form of Death Riders and Bucks against Swerve, Hangman, and the Ops, right? Yes. The title match they're already basically building to at All In is Mox against Ospreay, so they'll need to occupy Mox if he doesn't have a title match on the card. This could potentially open the door for Monet versus Hayter or Tony Storm versus insert opponent to main event as a women's main event. I mean, it seems like that's where they're heading. Anarchy in the arena, blood and guts. I mean, they're setting up factions, and it's that time of year when that happens. And I think that's why we're seeing the Bucks, courting the Death Riders, and why Swerve is showing up at a match that otherwise he wouldn't necessarily have business in. The Swerve Hangman teaming together to fight an enemy. We have common enemies, so we'll coexist. Works, and I hope Hook is fine and cleared by then, but I like Joe and Hook together. Shibata's a good kind of, hang around who doesn't get in the way and enhances things just fine. So, yeah, I mean, it works for me, and it doesn't occupy a ton of main eventers at the same time. Like having Joe and Hook and Shibata in the match with Hangman and Swerve positions or doesn't screw up there being many other top wrestlers who can be involved in something else significant while that match is also on a card. Chris, any thoughts?
It's definitely happening. My only worry is, okay, so we have Stadium Stampede or Anarchy in the Arena or, Obliteration in the O2 or whatever we're going to end up calling it. But then we've got the winner of the Owen gets a title shot. We've got Samoa Joe almost definitely getting a title shot, having tapped out or put the champion to sleep.
That was a quick call by the referee.
Very quick.
Yeah.
That's 3 months of pay-per-views without Moxley losing the title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Settle in. By
which point, a certain tattooed skateboarder will be probably back down from the top of Everest. I was hoping that they were going to call an audible. I don't think they are. I think they're still waiting for Darby.
And you don't want that?
I would like to see Darby as champion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to wait that long because Moxley has been unbearable in the last little while. And I said this, I think, last time I was on the post show. He's a hot dog cart away from wearing a gas mask to the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's very little difference in his character there, and it's getting old.
All right. Let's see. Zachman86 says, I'd rather see Hangman Will at Double or Nothing instead of Anarchy in the Arena. Yeah. All right, finally from JB, I thought the main event might have been a bit overbooked, you think? Before the incredible reaction and scene from the crowd as the Ops were crowned the Trios champions and Swerve got his revenge on the Bucks. A scene that can truly be played in AEW milestone highlight reels for years to come, which was a very fitting way to close out tonight's historic show. There's no question the crowd is invested in who won tonight's main event. As always, love the show and go VIP. Awesome. Thank you for that. Taylor sent a note. Okay, no. I was going to see if he followed up on something. Okay, let's see. Derek Mitchell notes, Tony Khan and AEW always pump their chests when they do well, especially early on when they're beating NXT in the ratings, but quite quiet when they're not doing well. They can't have it both ways. They can have it both ways. You're not going to succeed in every metric. There's going to be ups and downs. And AEW, when they had a quarter hour that beat SmackDown and it's in one demo, I mean, I don't know. It's in the eye of the beholder what's an achievement. NXT has bucked the trend of decreased viewership. There's no fair metric to really measure that battle anymore because AEW loses some of their TBS audience to Max now, and we don't know the percentage. It's not as inflated as the numbers that floated a couple weeks ago indicate, by all indications of how these numbers are generated. Streaming services counts anyone who watches for 1 minute. That gets added to the total to the people who watched all 2 hours, whereas Nielsen ratings just take the average for each minute and then say that's the average viewership. So if, for instance, if AEW Dynamite does 600,000 viewers, they actually had like 800-some thousand people watching for 1 minute to 60 minutes or 120 minutes, but it's just the average at any given minute during the show. So, and we're pretty clear about that in our ratings reports. More than the number we report watched some of the show. Streaming services, my understanding is, and this is still more art than science, more clandestine than transparent. But they just count everybody who watches even at all and stacks them on top of each other and then comes up with a big inflated number that's not comparable to that. So my point is we don't really have comparable data anymore because NXT's on CW now. They got a boost from being on a broadcast network for people who don't have cable. If they want to watch a WWE product and see those stars. So we've moved away from any apples to apples comparisons such as they ever existed. That said, a year from now, we'll have a trend line. How is AEW on TBS, how is Dynamite compared to NXT, if we want to keep making that comparison, to NXT on the CW this year compared to a year ago? That's about the best metric we're going to have in terms of who's growing or declining. But I don't begrudge Tony Khan to a point, celebrating little victories. I mean, there's teams that are behind in a game and they score and they celebrate. You're allowed to do that even if you're behind. Kyle Fassel says Tony Schiavone stuck out to me tonight though. Lots of numbers WWE like. Ramen Noodles said it's good business to tout your victories and divert attention from your flaws. TKO doesn't owe anybody anything. Zachman86 says Bischoff deserves a ridicule he gets from AEW, the grifter that he is. And let's see. I thought someone else had a comment about Bischoff. I can't find it. Anyway, Chris, the main event tonight, we talked about it a bit, but I don't think we gave. We went through. We critiqued the final minutes of it. When I say main event, I'm sorry, I'm doing a Tony Schiavone. The Ospreay Takeshita match. That's what I meant to say. I mean, in a way, the main event came earlier in the show. Is another way to look at it. What did you think of Takeshita Ospreay?
I mean,
overall?
Great match.
Yeah.
Sure, there were some things you could complain about, some slip ups here and there, but I mean, those two, I don't think they're capable of having a bad match with anyone, let alone with each other. Ospreay has been the best in-ring performer for the last couple of years, anywhere in the world, not just in AEW, and that doesn't show any signs of slowing down. And Takeshita just brings out the best in everybody that he faces. So this was always going to be stunningly good. I'm somewhat surprised Ospreay won. I could have seen it going either way, which honestly is the best way to go with these matches if you go into it not knowing it's a foregone conclusion. But it's what more can you say? It was just a really strong, hard-hitting match, and it didn't feel like they forgot their history with each other either, which sometimes does happen when it's been a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Chris, anything else you want to bring up from tonight's episode?
There was one thing that I had written down here. Just from the actual main event, I did think Powerhouse Hobbs looked really at home tonight. New gear, which seemed to just add to his level of badassery. And I thought it was a nice fit. I was trying to remember if he's had not a single title, but a title in AEW at all, because he seemed quite emotional, and it seemed like Samoa Joe was talking to him as he handed him his belt, and they were really making a big deal of the fact that Hobbs was one of the 3 men that won the title. So I don't think he's won a title before. I don't think he was FTW champion at any point.
He held the TNT title.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
He seemed very emotional about it.
Yeah.
It made sense to take the Trios title off.
I mean, he's been through a lot since then with injuries and stuff, and he
true.
got to be in a main event at Dynamite. He got to be in the ring with some big names. He was a chosen substitute off the bench. I can imagine, a number of reasons. But yeah, it might have been something else going on.
But getting the titles off Park made sense. I don't know if that was the plan even before the injury, but you had to once he became injured, and you can't have Moxley defending that title. So I liked what they did overall. I liked the locker room coming out at the end. Yes, ostensibly it was to celebrate the title win, but also it makes sense to have the faces come out if you're doing a celebration of episode 289, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it suffered from what it had to follow, but I don't think anything would have been able to follow that safely. So,
yeah,
it was a nice feel-good moment to finish the show on.
Yep. Cool. If you got nothing else, we can sign off, Chris.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody in the chat. Be sure that if you made it this far, especially, please like this show on YouTube or on the podcast app you're listening to us on. Give us a 5-star rating. If you think we don't deserve that, drop me a line. KellerWade@gmail.com or WadeKellerPodcast@gmail.com. I'll see it either way. But if you like us or just think, we deserve that, it will help. 5-star ratings help bring up the average. And get us, more recommendations in the algorithms. Also, comment on the show. I know YouTube loves that. All the algorithms love that. If there's discussion on the show or just kind words. And, of course, subscribe to our channel and set up alerts. So when we go live, such as potentially tomorrow night after Collision, that's the plan, you'll be reminded of it. And I'll just say again, we would love for you to become a VIP member, and I think you'll love it too. If you like our brand of wrestling reporting, this will cut through a lot of commercial breaks and ads on the site. So it's just a nice streamlined experience. You could just get to have an immersive experience, not missing out on anything that we do throughout the week. We all work really hard to bring you a ton of coverage of so much that goes on in a very busy pro wrestling industry. We've got a great team of people I'm really proud of. I mean, just the articles I put up on the site on PWTorch.com today, I'm proud of. Just the team we've assembled, the different voices we hear from. It's a diverse mix of people with different backgrounds and different passions, and it comes through in our work. The key word being passion, and we all look at wrestling through different lenses. Different things, brought us into wrestling and keeps us around. But you can experience all of that, and when you're a full VIP member, there is a customizable RSS feed, so you can curate your feeds on your phone app, Apple Podcasts or Apple CarPlay or whatever you listen to. If you're an Android user like me, you can curate your feed, so you can just specify a specific show or a group of shows and have them as individual separate feeds. So maybe you're in a nostalgia mood, maybe you just want to hear commentary, maybe you want to catch up on TV shows you missed that I do full reviews of, whatever it is, or an international mood. I want to catch up on what's going on in Japan. That is one of the benefits of our VIP setup. It's a really slick setup. In fact, when you sign up, if you're using the Apple Podcast app, you'll get an email. You click it. It automatically signs you up. No password, no username, no fumbling around with advanced settings. We have the best webmaster in the world who has done some custom programming to make the user experience really smooth. And so check it out. And heck, we're going into WrestleMania weekend. It's a great time to go full VIP. You can also get just the VIP shows on a podcast feed through Patreon or Apple Podcasts. That's all explained at PWTorch.com. .com/govip, pwtorch.com/govip. But if you're on Patreon or Spotify, you can jump right into it and get a 7-day free trial. Just search PWTorch VIP, and that will unlock all of our VIP podcasts. Thanks again to Chris Lansdell, and check us out tomorrow night after Collision if all goes as planned, and then I'll be back Friday night after SmackDown, and then Brandon LeClaire has you covered right here on the PWTorch YouTube channel and on the PWTorch Daily Cast feed with our WrestleMania post shows. Thanks again, everybody.